2:47 a.m. Security alert. Patricia Whitmore, our HOA president, cutting through my cellar padlock with bolt cutters. Designer purse over her shoulder. Flashlight in hand. Breaking into the cellar I'd built after my Marine Corps injury. 6 camera angles showed her descending the stairs, searching for the treasure I'd convinced her was hidden there. My phone was ready. 1 tap would activate hidden deadbolts. Steel barriers that would trap her inside until police arrived. The woman who'd spent 6 months trying to steal my property was about to learn the hardest lesson of her life. 1 tap. That's all it would take. But before I tell you how Patricia ended up handcuffed and reeking of pickled vegetables at 4 a.m., you need to understand how a HOA president goes from violation notices to felonies.
Damn it.
This is what happens when bullies pick the wrong Marine. My name's Marcus Sullivan. Mac to anyone who matters. I'm 52, disabled Marine veteran living on VA benefits in Millbrook Heights, Kentucky. This was farmland before developers carved it into subdivisions, but my 3 acres sit right in the middle, the holdout that refused to sell. 2 years ago I built a root cellar. Took 8 months, working 15-minute intervals between back pain flares. Proper foundation, ADA-compliant ramp, temperature control. That underground space holds $800 in preserved vegetables. Everything that keeps me eating well when the VA check runs thin. The smell down there, cool earth, mason jar seals, root vegetables, that's what freedom smells like when you've learned not to depend on anyone. Then Patricia Whitmore became HOA president and decided my freedom was her business. Patricia Whitmore. 48 years old. 6-year HOA president. Real estate agent with a white BMW, vanity plates reading sold for you. Fresh acrylics, designer clothes, perfume I can't pronounce. Her husband Ray was county commissioner, until ethics violations forced his resignation. First contact came on a Tuesday morning in March. Designer heels clicking on gravel like a countdown timer. Mr. Sullivan. Patricia Whitmore, HOA president. We need to discuss your situation. She handed me a violation notice. Unsightly agricultural structure diminishing property values. $50 fine. 30 days to remove. I read it twice. Ma'am, I built this cellar 2 years ago. Your HOA incorporated last year. Doesn't that grandfather my structure? Her smile went sharp. Not according to current community standards. We're elevating this neighborhood's profile. I'm sure someone with your background understands proper procedures. The way she said background, like my military service, was embarrassing. Marines don't fold when civilians try intimidation. We document, prepare, and wait for the perfect moment to strike back. The harassment started immediately. Week 2, grass violation. 3.1 inches when limit was 3.0. $75 fine. My lawn looked perfect. Week 3, mailbox paint faded. 75 more. Week 4, garden hose visible from street. Another 75. By month 2, I owed $425 for violations that didn't exist until Patricia needed them to. But the real problem was her pattern. Patricia walked my fence line constantly, photographing my cellar entrance, testing the lock with her manicured fingers. This wasn't power tripping. This was reconnaissance. April brought County Building Inspector Tom Bradley. His photographer took 47 photos of my cellar for a quick safety check. That wasn't code enforcement. That was intelligence gathering. I drove to the courthouse that afternoon. No inspection request filed. But there was something else. A development application by Whitmore Holdings LLC for a mixed-use residential project. The proposed site? 5 acres. Including my property. Patricia wasn't harassing me. She was conducting market research for a $500,000 land grab. May brought anonymous letters. Your neighbors are talking. Military service doesn't excuse antisocial behavior. Maybe it's time to move somewhere more suitable for your condition. Patricia was weaponizing my disability, turning my independence into evidence of mental instability. Thursday, neighbor Mrs. Henderson approached. Patricia mentioned you might be struggling with issues related to your service. She said veterans sometimes have difficulty adjusting. Mentioned your cellar project might indicate trauma response. Patricia was using people's kindness against me. Friday, Health Inspector Brenda Hayes. Reports of unlicensed food storage. Potential health hazards. I showed her my cellar. 20 minutes later, this is textbook proper preservation. No violations. But the complaint was filed 30 minutes after I'd refused Patricia's latest inspection request. She wasn't hiding her involvement anymore. She was desperate. June changed everything. I was at the courthouse when I overheard Patricia in the planning office. Final approval depends on clearing the Sullivan property. The seller interferes with drainage easement for the entire development. A man's voice, our investors committed $12 million to this project. If you can't deliver clear title to that parcel, we'll explore other options. $12 million. Patricia, the veteran is proving resistant, but my husband's position provides advantages. Code enforcement, health inspections, utility challenges. Plus his disability makes him vulnerable to competency questions. I recorded the next 10 minutes. Patricia discussing falsified reports, bribed officials and planned accidents involving underground structures. She was planning to destroy my cellar and make it look like an accident. I had her confession to conspiracy, bribery, fraud and planned property destruction. Federal prosecutors dream about evidence this clear. I called my Marine buddy Diesel Rodriguez. I need surveillance equipment that can document federal crimes and courtroom quality. We spent 2 days transforming my property into a surveillance fortress. Hidden cameras in tree hollows, birdhouses, underground containers. 6 angles on the cellar entrance. Motion activated. Infrared capable. Wireless upload to secure servers. If she whispers her social security number, we'll record it, Diesel said. But the masterpiece was the electronic lock. Military-grade deadbolts hidden inside the door frame, controlled by my smartphone. Silent operation. Steel construction. Once these engage, the only way out is from outside, the dealer explained. Designed for containment. Perfect. We tested it a dozen times. Door opens normally. Person enters. I tap the app. Deadbolts engage. Person trapped until I release them. Simple. Reliable. Invisible. Saturday I called Patricia. I've been thinking about your seller survey offer. Long pause. What kind of thinking? Family stories. Grandfather built it during the Depression. Chose that spot for reasons nobody talks about. Deep excavation. Sealed sections he never opened. Things from Europe that might be valuable. Pure fiction. But her breathing changed. I could arrange professional assessment, she said quickly. When? Soon. Very soon. Tuesday 11:23 p.m. Motion alert. Patricia's BMW cruising past. 3rd time that evening. Wednesday 1:30 a.m. She paced the parking lot talking to herself. My microphones caught fragments. Paranoid veteran hiding something valuable. Just going to look. Not stealing. 2 a.m. Dark clothing. Baseball cap. Bolt cutters. Flashlight. Final approach. 2:15 a.m. She destroyed my decoy padlock. The door opened easily. Cool air drifted up. She hesitated, then descended. I watched her search. Opening boxes. Checking shelves. Tapping walls. Where is it? She muttered. Has to be something. Nobody fights this hard over vegetables. I opened the lock control app. 1 tap would trap her until police arrived. 1 tap would end her reign of terror. I tapped the screen. Steel deadbolt slid home. Whisper quiet. The trap had sprung. Saturday afternoon, I made the phone call that would seal Patricia's fate. Patricia, this is Mac. I've been thinking about your offer to survey my cellar. Long pause. I could practically hear her brain spinning, weighing whether this was a trap or genuine opportunity. What kind of thinking? Maybe we could work something out. Cash deal. No lawyers, no paperwork. But I want to understand what makes that cellar so valuable to your development friends first. I don't know what you're talking about. Family stories, Patricia. My grandfather built that cellar during the Depression. Chose that exact spot for reasons nobody in my family talks about. Deep excavation. Sealed sections he never opened before he died. Things he brought back from Europe that might be worth something to the right buyers. Pure fiction. But Patricia's breathing changed as greed warred with caution. She was imagining hidden treasure, valuable artifacts, things that would justify months of harassment and legal risk. I could arrange a professional assessment. Archaeological consultants. Structural engineers. Full documentation for insurance purposes. When? Soon. Very soon. I'll call you when everything's arranged. She hung up before I could respond, probably afraid I'd change my mind if we talked longer. Tuesday night brought confirmation that Patricia had taken the bait. 11:23 p.m. Motion sensor alert. Patricia's BMW cruising past my house for the 3rd time that evening, slowing down as she studied my property like a general planning an assault. Through hidden cameras, I watched her park 2 blocks away and walk back on foot, staying in shadows, testing my cellar door with what looked like a key ring. She'd been planning this for weeks. Maybe getting copies made during one of her fake inspections. Maybe finding a way to duplicate my lock during her surveillance drives. Wednesday brought psychological preparation on both sides. 1:30 a.m. Patricia paced the community center parking lot, talking to herself, working through whatever justification she'd created for breaking into my property. Through directional microphones I caught fragments of her self-talk. Paranoid veteran hiding something valuable. Just going to look? Not really stealing, he practically invited me. Patricia was convincing herself that breaking into my cellar wasn't a real crime. Just a necessary investigation of suspicious activity by an unstable neighbor who'd basically given her permission. The self-deception was almost impressive. Almost. 2 a.m. Final approach. I watched through multiple camera angles as Patricia made her move. Dark clothing instead of designer outfits. Hair pulled back under a baseball cap. Moving with careful precision that showed she'd rehearsed this operation multiple times in her mind. She carried bolt cutters and a powerful flashlight. No backup. No partners. Just a desperate real estate agent gambling everything on one last attempt to steal my independence. 2:15 a.m. She reached the cellar entrance and began working on the visible padlock. The sound of metal cutting metal echoed through the night air as Patricia destroyed my decoy lock, completely unaware that real security lay hidden in systems she couldn't see or understand. Through hidden cameras, I watched her examine the door after cutting through my fake lock. It opened easily, revealing wooden steps leading down into darkness. Cool air drifted up from below, carrying the earthy smell of preserved food and settled dust. Patricia stood at the threshold for a long moment, flashlight beam dancing across the stairs. Even through infrared video, I could see her hands shaking slightly. Breaking and entering was probably new territory for someone accustomed to legal harassment and bureaucratic corruption. But greed overcame caution. She tucked the bolt cutters under her arm and started down the stairs, designer shoes clicking on wood with each careful step, descending into the trap I'd spent weeks preparing. 2:17 a.m. Patricia disappeared into my cellar, flashlight beams sweeping across rows of mason jars like she was searching for the treasure she'd convinced herself was hidden there. I sat in my kitchen, coffee growing cold, watching security monitors show every angle of Patricia's criminal trespass. She moved through my carefully organized food supplies with increasing frustration. Opening storage boxes. Checking behind shelving units. Even tapping walls looking for hidden compartments. The audio picked up her breathing, quick and shallow, adrenaline mixing with excitement as she imagined discovering whatever valuable secret justified months of harassment. "Where is it?" she muttered, growing frustrated after 10 minutes of fruitless searching. "Has to be something. Nobody fights this hard over vegetables. Where did that old man hide it?" She opened jars of preserved tomatoes, looking for something hidden inside. Checked the temperature control system for concealed panels. Examined the ventilation ducts for secret storage. Patricia was so convinced there was treasure down there that she couldn't accept the simple truth. It was just a root cellar. Just food. Just independence. That's when I reached for my phone and opened the lock control app. Through the security feed, I watched Patricia continue her treasure hunt, completely unaware that her world was about to change forever. She'd spent 6 months terrorizing me with threats of losing my home, my independence, my dignity, weaponizing my disability against me, planning to destroy the cellar I'd built with my own damaged hands. Time to show her what losing everything actually felt like. I positioned my finger over the electronic lock control, watching Patricia rifle through my preserved tomatoes like a common thief searching for jewelry. One tap would trap her in my cellar until police arrived. One tap would end her reign of terror permanently. One tap would prove that disabled veterans don't just disappear when neighborhood bullies want their property. Patricia Whitmore had spent months learning that actions have consequences. Tonight, she was about to get her masterclass in cause and effect. I tapped the screen. Steel deadbolts slid home with a whisper-quiet thunk that Patricia didn't even hear over the sound of her own searching. The trap had sprung. 2:47 a.m. The moment of perfect justice arrived with the soft mechanical whisper of deadbolts engaging. Patricia was officially trapped in my root cellar, surrounded by the preserved vegetables she tried to force me to destroy, breathing the earthy air of independence she'd spent 6 months trying to steal from me. I sat back in my kitchen chair, taking a slow sip of coffee that had gone cold, and waited for her to discover what had happened. It took exactly 4 minutes and 12 seconds. The first sound was her footsteps on the stairs, quick and confident as she headed for what she thought was an easy exit. Then silence as she reached the door and pushed against it. Then pushed harder. What the hell? Through crystal clear audio, I heard Patricia's confidence turn to confusion, then confusion to the first edge of real panic. She threw her shoulder against the door. The thud echoed through the speakers. But steel deadbolts don't care how important you think you are or how many development deals depend on your success. Hello? Hello. The door is stuck. I finished my cold coffee and poured a fresh cup. No hurry. Patricia had spent months making my life hell with calculated psychological torture. She could spend a few minutes contemplating the consequences of her choices. Mac Sullivan. I know you're up there. Her voice cracked with genuine fear as the reality of her situation penetrated the fog of entitlement. Someone had deliberately trapped her in this underground space. And that someone was the disabled veteran she'd been terrorizing for half a year. Let me out. This is kidnapping. False imprisonment. Actually, it was citizen's arrest of a criminal caught in the act of breaking and entering on my property. But I didn't feel like explaining legal technicalities to someone pounding on my cellar door like a caged animal. The pounding continued for 15 minutes. Patricia alternating between demanding release, threatening lawsuits, and trying to negotiate her way out of the hole she'd literally dug for herself. Mac, I can explain. This is all a misunderstanding. I was checking for structural damage. Community safety concerns. At 3:15 a.m., with bolt cutters in her hands and my destroyed padlock as evidence, she was really going with misunderstanding as her defense strategy. Patricia's sense of entitlement was truly spectacular. My husband will have the FBI here within an hour. You can't hold a county commissioner's wife. Former county commissioner. And his political connections wouldn't save Patricia from felony breaking and entering charges, especially when documented by surveillance footage that could make CSI investigators jealous. 3:30 a.m. brought the bargaining phase. I'll drop all the HOA violations. Clean slate. We can forget this whole thing happened. Forget 6 months of harassment. Forget the fraudulent inspection reports. Forget her conspiracy with Marcus Capital Group to steal my property for a $12 million development deal. Patricia's definition of forgetting was impressively self-serving. 3:45 a.m. brought the first real breakdown. Please, Mac. I'm sorry. I know I went too far. I was just trying to help the neighborhood property values. Please let me out. I promise I'll leave you alone. The audio picked up something I'd never heard from Patricia before. Genuine human emotion breaking through the armor of entitlement. Fear was stripping away her carefully constructed facade, revealing the scared middle-aged woman underneath the neighborhood dictator. But even in her panic, Patricia couldn't stop lying. I wasn't going to take anything. I just wanted to see what was down there. You made it sound so mysterious with your grandfather's stories. I was just curious, that's all. Just curiosity. She still thought I was stupid enough to believe she'd broken into my property with bolt cutters at 3 a.m. just to satisfy curiosity about family legends. Even trapped and terrified, she couldn't resist trying to manipulate the situation. 4 a.m., decision time. I could keep her trapped until sunrise. Let her stew in complete psychological breakdown for another few hours. Part of me wanted to see how many secrets she'd confess when panic convinced her she might die in my root cellar. But Patricia had learned her lesson. Time to call in the professionals and let the justice system finish what I'd started. I dialed the non-emergency number for Kentucky State Police, keeping my voice calm and reasonable. This is Marcus Sullivan at 247 Oak Ridge Drive in Millbrook Heights. I need to report a breaking and entering in progress. Are you in immediate danger, sir? No, ma'am. The intruder broke into my root cellar about an hour ago. I've secured the area and contained the situation, but I need an officer to take custody of the suspect. You've contained the intruder? Yes, ma'am. Electronic lock system engaged when they entered without permission. They can't escape, but they're not in any danger. Just inconvenienced until law enforcement arrives to sort things out. Brief pause as the dispatcher processed that information. Sir, you're saying you've locked someone in your basement? Root cellar, ma'am. And they locked themselves in when they broke into my property with bolt cutters and burglary tools. I just made sure they couldn't leave the scene of the crime before you folks could arrive and document everything properly. Units en route. ETA 12 minutes. Stay on the line until officers arrive. I activated the Cellar's intercom system, another feature Diesel had installed specifically for this moment. Patricia. The pounding stopped immediately. Mac, thank God. Let me out. Police are on their way. Should be here in about 10 minutes. You might want to use that time thinking about what you're going to tell them about why you're in my cellar with burglary tools at 4 in the morning. Long silence. Then desperately, Mac, we can work this out. Whatever you want. Money. Property rights. I'll drop everything permanently. Just let me out before the police get here. Too late for negotiations, Patricia. You crossed the line when you broke into my home. It's not your home. It's just a cellar. Just vegetables. Even now, trapped and panicked, Patricia couldn't resist minimizing her crime. Breaking into a mere cellar somehow wasn't as serious as breaking into a house in her entitled mind. At 4:11 a.m., red and blue lights painted my driveway in alternating colors as Kentucky State Police arrived to collect my gift-wrapped criminal. Justice was about to be served ice cold, exactly the way Patricia had served harassment to me for 6 months. The woman who thought she was untouchable was about to learn that nobody's above the law. Not even a HOA president with political connections and $12 million in development deals riding on stealing my independence. Officer Sarah Martinez stepped out of the patrol car, looking like she'd handled plenty of strange situations in her career, but maybe never one quite like this. Mr. Sullivan? You're saying someone broke into your cellar and you locked them inside? Yes, ma'am. She's been harassing me for 6 months trying to force me off my property so her development partners could steal my land. Tonight she escalated from bureaucratic harassment to felony breaking and entering. I've got the whole thing recorded in multiple angles with full audio. And this person isn't injured? No, ma'am. Just inconvenienced and probably embarrassed. Cellar's got proper ventilation, comfortable temperature, plenty of food and water if she gets hungry. She's actually safer in there than running around loose at 4 in the morning with bolt cutters. Officer Martinez walked to the cellar entrance where Patricia's muffled voice could be heard pleading for release. Ma'am, this is Kentucky State Police. Are you injured? No, I'm not injured. This psycho veteran locked me in here. I want him arrested for kidnapping. Ma'am, what's your name and why were you on this property? Patricia Whitmore. My husband is county commissioner. This is completely illegal detention. Officer Martinez turned to me with raised eyebrows. County commissioner's wife? Former commissioner. He resigned last month before ethics charges could be filed. And yes, that's Patricia Whitmore, HOA president, who's been filing false violation reports against me for 6 months as part of a scheme to steal my property for a development deal. Everything's documented. I handed her my phone with security footage queued up and ready to play. Officer Martinez watched 3 minutes of crystal-clear evidence showing Patricia's entire criminal operation. Her approach staying in shadows. Cutting my lock with deliberate precision. Entering without permission. Searching my storage while muttering about paranoid veterans and hidden treasure. This is very comprehensive documentation, Mr. Sullivan. I believe in being thorough, ma'am. 20 years in the Marine Corps taught me the value of proper intelligence gathering. 20 minutes later, my driveway looked like a major crime scene. 2 patrol cars. Sergeant's vehicle. Even a detective called in because of Patricia's political connections and the unusual nature of the arrest. But all the connections in Kentucky couldn't erase video evidence of felony breaking and entering captured from 6 different angles with audio clear enough to use in court. I unlocked the cellar with a single tap on my phone app. The door swung open and Patricia emerged like a creature from a nightmare movie. Her designer clothes were wrinkled and filthy from crawling around my cellar floor searching for imaginary treasure. Perfect hair disheveled and tangled. Expensive makeup streaked with tears and sweat from 2 hours of panic in an underground space. But the best detail, the one that made the whole night worthwhile, was the smell. Patricia reeked of preserved onions and pickled beets. 2 hours trapped among the vegetables she tried to force me to destroy had soaked her expensive clothes in the earthy vinegary smell of home-canned food. Arrest him, she screamed, pointing with a shaking finger still clutching the bolt cutters. False imprisonment. Kidnapping. Civil rights violations. Sergeant Williams looked at the burglary tools in Patricia's hand, then at the destroyed padlock on the ground, then at my calm demeanor as I stood in my bathrobe holding coffee and looking like a man who'd just won the lottery. Ma'am, I need you to drop those tools and calm down right now. Detective Reynolds stepped forward, tired-looking man in his 50s who'd clearly seen every variation of human stupidity during his career. Mrs. Whitmore, I need you to explain why you were on Mr. Sullivan's property at 3 in the morning with burglary equipment. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. Her prepared story, whatever lie she'd constructed to justify this operation, crumbled under the weight of video evidence showing her cutting locks and entering without permission. He invited me. He said there were valuable things hidden in his cellar. Family treasures. He practically begged me to come look. I calmly played the recording of our phone conversation from 2 days ago. Patricia's voice came through crystal clear. I could arrange professional assessment. When? My response, call me when everything's arranged. Her voice again, late, maybe 2 or 3 a.m. I'll handle everything personally this time. Then she'd hung up before I could respond, because there was no invitation, no permission, no agreement to anything. Patricia Whitmore, Officer Martinez announced in the formal tone that means your life just changed forever. You're under arrest for breaking and entering, criminal mischief, possession of burglary tools, and criminal trespass. The handcuffs clicked shut around Patricia's wrists with the most satisfying sound I'd heard in 6 months. As they loaded her into the patrol car, she was still screaming threats about lawyers and lawsuits and federal prosecution. But all I heard was the sweet sound of justice being served to someone who thought she was untouchable. 6 weeks later, Patricia pled guilty to felony breaking and entering to avoid the additional federal charges I'd documented in her conspiracy recordings. 18 months in state prison. 5 years probation. $25,000 in restitution to me for harassment and property damage. Her real estate license was permanently revoked. Her business collapsed. Her marriage ended when Ray discovered that her development scheme had destroyed his political career and their financial future. The $12 million development deal with Marcus Capital Group? Dead within days. No legitimate developer touches properties with active federal criminal investigations and felony convictions attached. The neighborhood transformed overnight. Without Patricia's reign of terror, people started acting like actual neighbors instead of terrified subjects. Maria Santos became HOA president, governing through consensus and respect instead of clipboard tyranny and violation notices. My root cellar became a local landmark where neighborhood kids learn about food preservation, self-reliance, and the importance of standing up to bullies who think money and connections make them untouchable. But the real victory was personal. Patricia had spent months trying to prove that a disabled veteran couldn't defend his independence against money, political connections, and corporate development interests. She was spectacularly, publicly, and permanently wrong. My root cellar still smells like preserved vegetables and hard-won self-reliance. Patricia's prison cell probably smells like institutional disinfectant, regret, and the slow realization that some people can't be bullied into submission no matter how entitled you think you are. Some lessons are best learned the hard way. In Patricia's case, the lesson cost her everything she'd spent her life building, and she learned it locked in a cellar surrounded by vegetables, smelling like pickled onions, waiting for police to arrive and end the reign of terror she thought would never end. Justice served ice cold at 4 a.m. Exactly how it should be.